Hey guys, welcome back to Teen Talk Central. In this week's episode, we're diving into something so many of us struggle with but don't always talk about out loud. It's confidence and social anxiety. If this is something that you want to listen to, then definitely continue listening to this week's episode of Teen Talk Central. Hi guys, it's Mia. So let's get started with the episode. I feel like we have a lot to talk about in this topic. So I want to start off with, I think we all know that feeling when your heart is kind of racing before you walk into the classroom, or when you're invited to a party and your brain just starts to spin all over the place. You are thinking, what if no one talks to me? Or what if I say something awkward or wrong? What if people are judging me? Yeah, I think we've all been there. And it's not a really good feeling. In this episode, I just want to break down that cycle, and I want to talk about what confidence really is and why social anxiety shows up, the psychology behind it, as always, and most importantly, ways that you can use tools to feel more grounded and show up as yourself, even when the nerves do sometimes kick in. So I feel like we need to start with confidence. I feel like a lot of people think that confidence means you're never scared or never afraid, and you're kind of like always that one best version of yourself, and you're never insecure. I feel like people kind of use confidence, being confident and being insecure is kind of opposite. So if you're always confident, you're never insecure, but if you're always insecure, you're never confident. But that's really not true. I think confidence is not the absence of fear. It's being able to move forward even when you do feel nervous. So you have that nerve in your system, but there's also a way for you to kind of overcome it. That is true confidence. You can be confident but still nervous at the same time. Psychologists often separate confidence into two things. They use self-esteem, which is how you value yourself overall, and self-efficacy or efficacy, which is your belief that you can handle a specific situation. So that is your belief system, and seeing, okay, I know I can do this, or I think I can do this. So if you're ever nervous about giving a class presentation, it doesn't mean you don't have confidence in yourself. It just means that your brain isn't fully convinced yet that you can handle all of that in that very specific moment. But that doesn't mean you can't do it. Confidence grows with practice and exposure. It's not some fixed personality trait you either have or don't have. It's not something that you can genetically inherit. Some people have grown up in a presence where they're always talking in front of larger crowds, so they can seem a little bit more confident from the outside, and everything may seem to come more natural because that's what they grew up with. But within reality, it's actually just a lot of practice. So that's why people say practice makes perfect, and that is the same in this scenario. So I want to get into kind of the psychology aspect and how social anxiety is actually super common in teens and why it can be common in teens. When you walk into a social situation, your amygdala, the part of your brain that's responsible for fear, sometimes treats it like danger. It kind of triggers that fight or flight, sweaty palms, racing heart, tense shoulders. Even if you're not being chased by a tiger, your body sometimes can act like you are. And basically that makes you feel like really nervous even if you're not. So sometimes, for example, you've practiced a presentation hundreds of times and you know it by heart, but for some reason you just in that moment are so afraid. That is because your body can think that this is a flight or fright response, and it can activate the amygdala in our brain. So we have to learn how to calm that down. Next one is called the spotlight effect. I feel like people have heard about this before. The concept is when we overestimate how much people really notice us. For example, if you stumble your words, you might think everyone is judging you. But in reality, most people probably didn't even notice because they're always focused on themselves. At the end of the day, humans only care about themselves. That is the kind of harsh reality of being a human. So sometimes we just have to remember that not all the eyes are on us. And I know that can be hard to kind of understand sometimes, but that really is the truth. And it's something that you have to kind of come to learn. And I just think that comes from practice. And the last one is cognitive Distorians. Social anxiety comes from distorted thinking patterns. For example, mind reading. They probably think I'm boring. Or catastrophizing. If I mess this up, I kind of ruined everything. Or the all or nothing thinking. Either I'm completely confident or I'm a total failure. I think recognizing these distortions either is the kind of first step in breaking them down, or it could be a bit difficult, I think, because a lot of people, they don't understand what they're thinking in the moment, and then they end up kind of distorting their own thinking. So cognitive distortions can kind of mess with the way you think, and then you start overthinking. Kind of the overview of this is just that your brain is overthinking and like putting you in situations that are not actually true. So if someone's looking at you a little bit funny, you think that they're mad at you when maybe they're just thinking about something that's happening in their own life. So here are kind of some tools I can suggest to build confidence. And these are also strategies. The first one is just breathing to calm anxiety. I think this is a really common one. It's also backed up by a lot of science. When your heart races, your body obviously thinks you're in danger, so slow breathing tricks your brain into calming down. So try a simple 4-7-8 pattern that I learned. That includes inhaling for 4 seconds, hold for 7, and exhale for 8. It really does help you kind of recenter yourself and calm the mind and the brain and the body. Next is small exposure. Don't force yourself into huge social situations kind of right away. You should start small, say hi to one person, ask one question in class, and over time, these small exposures will train your brain to stop seeing social settings as threats. Same thing with presentations. You can start by presenting in front of yourself, then maybe parents, and then friends, and then some classmates, and then all your classmates, because it really does help, and exposure therapy has been proven to work in many different ways. Another one is positive self-talk. I think replacing your harsh inner thoughts with realistic ones. Instead of saying, everyone's going to judge me, you could try saying, most people are focused on themselves. And confidence doesn't mean lying to yourself. It's just more reminding yourself of what's actually true and what you know that you can do, because that's really important. And also body language. Always stand tall, shoulders back, make brief eye contact with people, and smile very lightly. Your body posture obviously sends signals to your brain, kind of I got this signals. So even if you don't feel as confident, your body can help you start to. And if you walk around with very confident posture all the time, you can try to feel more confident. And I feel like that works for me. And if you're ever nervous about a situation, you can prepare a couple of go-to conversation starters. Simple stuff like, how's your week going? Or what classes are you taking? It does take the pressure off of having to think of something in the very moment. I can give you guys kind of a real life example. I once had this big kind of event at school where everyone seemed so put together, and I felt super awkward walking in alone. So my brain kind of went straight into panic mode, but instead of leaving, I tried something small and I walked up to people I didn't really know. I said, hey, what have you been up to this summer? And that one question kind of opened up a whole conversation. And by the end of the night, I felt a lot calmer because I had these certain conversation starters kind of stored in my head. So that's really the thing about confidence, is it builds up in layers. You don't just suddenly become fearless. You collect little wins, and each one ends up adding up to what other people just see as one big confidence. So the big takeaway is confidence isn't just about being fearless, guys. And social anxiety does not mean you're broken or antisocial. It's just your brain reacting to a situation that feels risky, even if it's not. And every time you show up for yourself, even when you're nervous, you're actually strengthening your confidence muscles. Just think of confidence as a muscle that you have to continue to train in order to grow and get stronger. And that's something you should be proud of. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Teen Talk Central. If you tried any of these confidence hacks like breathing, small exposure, or conversation starters, let me know on Instagram at Teen Talk Central. And remember, you don't have to feel fearless to be confident. Just showing up is already a win. And love you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.